All week long, we've been sharing the experience of suicide loss survivors and recognizing September as Suicide Awareness Month. This morning, former TV6 morning news anchor Elizabeth Peterson joins us with the final story from her series, Suicide Loss Survivors Finding a Path Forward. Good morning, Elizabeth.
Good morning, Mandy. Good morning, everyone. Throughout these pieces, we've seen and heard the ways every suicide is different, how every path forward for loss survivors is unique. We've shared these stories in the hope that you at home know you're not alone. There is a community of support and resources. We live in a world that can feel isolating and heavy. This morning, one man's mission to lighten those feelings, educate, and save lives.
We'll never get to zero suicide because there's just too many variables for prevention. But if we can stop the ones that are preventable, that's the hope.
Dave Aro, a suicide loss survivor and advocate for resources, programs, and change, understands the magnitude of his fight. But for him, it's a personal mission he refuses to give up on.
Things you would never really think about unless you went through this. And I've learned so much about what the aftermath can be for people. It's just incredible that this isn't a more identified issue.
Dave's friend, Pat Bray, died by suicide on November 30th, 2021. Pat was heavily involved in the community and with charities. Dave says he made the people around him happier. He was a father, a role model, the kind of person that left a lasting imprint. But behind closed doors and with those who really knew him, he struggled with his mental health.
I had gone through a couple of different cycles of his depression, and we were always able to talk our way through it, or he was able to go to his provider and get different medications or something that would kind of get him to snap out of, what he was dealing with.
But he wasn't snapping out of it. Dave remembers Pat being almost a different person. The methods weren't working, and while Dave tried talking to him, there was nothing he could do.
He just wasn't there. And I could not get him to engage in conversation. He basically just kept saying, I can't. And when I brought up his daughters and I said, your daughters need you, he started to cry, but he still felt like they were going to be better off without him.
It wasn't true, of course. And the pain, heartbreak, and trauma left behind was enormous. It was a lot to digest. It took Dave about a month to realize he was experiencing symptoms of PTSD. Sleep and attention issues, lack of appetite, feelings of helplessness. He realized he needed help.
I think a lot of people don't get help, again, because they think that they can just kind of work their way through it on their own. And I don't know what would have happened to me if I hadn't.
Through the loss of Pat, Dave saw a void, a lack of support for suicide loss survivors, eventually turning his experience into action. Dave created the Suicide Survivor Fund to help with expenses related to suicide. He began a partnership with 6 Feet Over and the Lemonade Program, a statewide initiative to connect suicide loss survivors with resources and financial assistance.
In order to really kind of gauge was this going to work? We just kind of had to see what was going to happen. And the first year we had the program up and running, a lot of it was just getting the law enforcement people aware of it. So when they would go to a suicide, to make sure that they gave the family the information so they could contact the program.
The initiative has helped dozens of families in the Upper Peninsula since Pat's death. And it's also opened the conversation in our communities, lessening the stigma around suicide and feelings of isolation.
I think that if people were comfortable enough to be able to walk up to a person that they know who's dealing with a suicide, or really any kind of sudden or traumatic death, and just say, how are you? Is there anything I can do for you? Those sort of things will go a long way in helping that person feel a little less outcast.
Grief, healing, finding a path forward, it isn't linear. It's messy, it's hard, it's heavy, but Dave believes it's worth it.
I really feel like we're never going to get to no suicide. So there's always going to be a need for what we do. But I am hopeful that the work we do can save some people. and you save one person, it's worth it.
If you or someone you know is struggling or in a suicidal crisis, help is available. Call 988. The Suicide and Crisis Lifeline is available 24 hours a day. We also have a list of resources on our website, uppermichigansource.com, under the Suicide Prevention Resources tab on the homepage. Now, we are continuing this series further in a special program that will be available online only and through the TV6 Plus app that will be available on October 2nd. We talk with the health educator at the Marquette County Health Department and the Lemonade Program Director about the work being done, and we'll have more on resources and ways to connect as a community.